I didn't want to be that full-time welder guy for whatever reason. I'm young.
Yeah.
I think I knew more.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I joined the Army and got my college money and went to school for electromechanical, and damned if I didn't get a job at a welding company.
This episode of the Fabricator Podcast is brought to you by Miller Electric. Welders make their impact one weld at a time, leaving a piece of themselves in every finished project. Miller supports and fuels their passions with machines, technology, and safety equipment to meet the ever-evolving needs of manufacturers, fabricators, construction workers, and artists. Because it's not just about welding, it's about fostering new ideas and inspiring the next generation. Go to millerwelds.com to learn more.
Hello, this is Dan Davis of the Fabricator magazine, joined by Josh Welton of Brown Dog Welding. You might know him for other work he's done with us on the Fabricator.com, the Fabricator magazine, as well as the Welder magazine. We're here at the Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association show in Las Vegas. You might know it as SEMA. We're here in the Miller Electric booth. We have a partnership with them at this show. They're helping us by providing space so we can do the Fabricator Podcast live from the show floor. Josh, always excited to be at SEMA.
Hell yeah.
And always excited to drive to SEMA.
Yes.
So tell us about your trip in.
So this year is the first year we had something that wasn't like 1,000 horsepower rear-wheel drive. So we had a 392 Wrangler from Jeep. And from Michigan, we went up through the UP, through Wisconsin, Minnesota, Dakotas, and went to Yellowstone for a day and a half, Grand Tetons. Last year, I was working out at Dugway / Area 52 outside of Salt Lake City and found a bunch of cool off-road trails. So took it out there. Yesterday morning, hit the Salt Flats, and the conditions were perfect. The salt was super hard and compact, and found the speed limiter, the speed limited miles per hour on the Jeep, which is 110, which is probably because it has all terrains on it. That Jeep could keep going because it's a missile. So yeah, yesterday we went, and on the Salt Flats, if you've ever been there, it's just like you're on a different world. Right. You don't see anything anywhere. You're in the middle. You see mountains on one side, and you see just infinity on the other side, and it's like being in a totally different universe. It's so cool.
Yeah. You're describing that, but the thing that sticks out in my head, you were kind of describing getting stuck at 10,000 feet.
Yeah, that was my bad. So the all-terrains, I mean, they're okay in the snow, but the lugs get packed pretty easy, and it's not there, without having changed. I went into something that looked like it was doable, but the drifting action had made it much higher than I thought it was. So it was up to, it was a couple feet high, and we were going downhill, and I kept trying to back up, and I was just making like little steps that I couldn't roll over. So finally, like Darla said she's praying to God, and I'm, trying to go through my Rolodex of thoughts of how to get out. And we ended up, it's on this like mountain trail where on the one side you can see all of Salt Lake City. It's a dip, you're going down, and on the other side it's just kind of a hill. So I found some dirt on the hill and was able to get my front tire up on that. And once the front right tire hit, was able to pull me out like that. So, but that was like a half hour, 45 minutes, and Darla was pretty sure we were going to be stuck up there for a while, and like we were the only people up there, so there were no tracks where I was going at that point.
No ride share available in case you got stuck.
No, it was just pure snow.
So I'm
everywhere.
glad you took your guest hosting duty seriously.
Yes,
by traveling up mountains and
I mean, hey, listen, I gotta live my life,
Yes,
so
you do have to live your
I knew
life.
I had no doubt. No. I knew he'd be here. Maybe I had a little bit of doubt at one point, but
yes,
I hit it.
Meanwhile, I almost walked out of the airport with someone else's bag that I grabbed instead of my own.
So Dan almost got arrested.
I almost got arrested.
Josh almost was stranded in a mountain somewhere.
Yeah, it might have been several times, but you get lost out in the middle of nowhere when it's dark out. We went to the Nellis Dunes yesterday because we were coming in and it was rush hour, and all the construction that's going on with I-15 and everywhere in Vegas right now. So we're like, it's going to take forever. Let's just hop off on the sand dunes. And we're out there and must have gotten deeper and deeper in the park and not even knowing it. And all of a sudden it's dark out. and then we were trying to find our way out, and it's all like up hills, down hills, rocks everywhere, sand dunes everywhere. Like, so yeah, we did make it to our hotel though, like 8 last night, so plenty of time. Plenty of time.
The story keeps getting better the more we talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I
didn't know about the last part of it.
We had a whole night that I could have, used to get out of whatever situation I was in. We could have rolled up here at 7 o'clock and.
All right, we'll save the story for when you actually take a wrong turn and hit Sasquatch, but we'll get into that later.
Yes, that was interesting.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy this episode with Andy Weyenberg of Miller Electric. Some interesting conversation, not only about welding, but also welding in the performance racing industry.
Andy's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. So thanks.
Every job deserves Miller quality. That's why the new Millermatic 142 makes professional quality MIG welds easy. Miller's newest portable MIG welder is fast and simple to set up, has a high duty cycle, and can run on generator power. Everything you expect from a Miller MIG welder. Give every job you weld, no matter its size, pro quality results with the Millermatic 142. Learn more at millerwelds.com. Now's a good time to mention that we offer sponsorship opportunities for the podcast. Amy Hudson, Senior Account Executive, is here to give us a quick overview.
Yes, we have 2 sponsorship levels. The first has logo placement, some ad read-ins. The second option that we're really excited about is definitely kind of cool, where you can bring in a customer and kind of tell the problem solution story that way.
Great. So to get all the details, please go to thefabricator.com/advertise, or you can contact your sales rep directly. And now back to the episode.
Welcome back to the Fabricator Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Andy Weyenberg here from Miller Electric, and we're shooting this live at the SEMA show in Vegas. Special guest of the Miller Electric folks. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for coming in.
And Josh Weldon joining us as well. Andy, what's a SEMA show all about for Miller Electric?
Well, for SEMA for us, it's like Disney World for car guys, right? And so in this industry, highly welding engaged, right? And not only from a end user standpoint, but also companies. This is the premier place for bolt-on performance and looks and everything, right? So we still get that end user customer looking for his own personal machine because this is inspiration to them. These are high-end project cars, but it's an inspiration point for them. They feel they can do it, and we feel like we can help them complete their projects with the welding equipment that we offer.
Yeah.
Right on.
Josh, you offer a kind of unique perspective, being that you've been to, as you described, 15-ish of these shows.
Yeah.
What's it mean for you?
It's like an annual rite of passage for me, and I always do we always drive out, so I've driven out Vipers and the Viper ACR, Hellcats, Demons, and this time I got a 4x4 Jeep. So this show is, I love this show, but the journey here and back is one of the best parts, no matter what I'm driving.
Yeah.
But then so the changes that have happened to the show over the last 15 years, like it was pretty, you have a show and there's not much put into design or art or how it looks. And that completely changed when my friend Max Grundy, who's an artist, got the contract to do SEMA design for 3 years. And he bargained with them to get us in the show, so us as artists. So we were able to get floor space to sell our sculptures, or in their case, their paintings. For me, it was sculptures. And that was a huge thing for me because not many artists got invited to this, and I was one of them. So I would put all my sculptures in the back of a Demon or whatever and drive out here and do the show. So personally, it's meant a lot to me. And then my friend my friend Ed Tilrock did the next 3 years of doing the art, and then another friend did the next. So it's cool seeing just the aesthetics of the place.
Right.
Like, and it's gotten so big now with
Yeah.
the after shows and the pre-shows and the build off and
Right.
things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, you got an entire festival occurring.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And usually we're here for the whole thing, but Vegas is a city that drains you, drains your energy. So
That's a good way to put it.
spending most of our time not in the show this year, but
Right.
I'll still get around and see as much as I can see.
Yeah. So, from your perspective, Andy, how long have you been coming here?
Oh my gosh, it's well over 27, maybe at least.
Wow.
Oh, and how has
All right,
that
I'm
changed?
gonna date myself.
Go
So I've
ahead.
been with Miller for 34 years. So
Man alive.
I've been coming out here for a long time. It might be 30.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know it kind of stopped there for a little bit, then picked back up. But
What was it like the
Okay.
first years?
the first years, it was exciting because I felt it wasn't. And I'm gonna say this, I don't mean it in a negative way, but commercialized.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so it was still in that growing stage where it was finding its identity. And
It's like
and
button down trade show. Kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah. And there was still high end cars, but it like to me, I don't really do like show car material stuff anymore. It's just, to me, it's too intensive. I don't build show cars, I build go cars.
Right.
Like I don't like trailer queens. I mean, I'm an abuser.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how I roll.
Yeah, and so and that comes probably from my racing background, right? I mean, it's build them, race them, wreck them, rebuild them,
Uh-huh.
repeat.
Right.
But I can appreciate the quality and the artistic stuff that goes into these cars. That I get inspired by that. I don't have some of that vision.
Right.
I can build anything.
Right.
If I have an objective and a blueprint that I make or create, I can do it.
Yeah.
I wish I was more artistic, and that kind of is where I get out of this show is I get to see how creative people are. I
Right.
love like going and see like Josh's stuff, or we were just talking about Tom Patz's.
Yeah.
He's got same kind of that vision. My father has some of that, and I just didn't inherit it.
Right. You consider your welds to be kind of maybe an extension of the creativity from their functionality standpoint? Because I imagine they look pretty
Yeah.
well compared to some hacks.
Yeah, it's for sure. I'm not bad at it. I'm not as good as I used to be. I've had some damage in my neck. I got a plate and half a dozen screws, and I've lost some of that. I have some nerve issues, so that's frustrating for me to try and kind of get.
I feel your
to
pain.
that area. So I mean, honestly, I was a lot better. I'm not bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still building.
You're still
cars.
riding in the
Yeah.
cars you work on, so
Sure.
that's the ultimate
Yeah, right.
endorsement.
Yeah, no, for sure. But at the same time, I think I don't consider it artistic. I can consider it creative. There's a difference in my mind.
Right.
Problem solving.
My mind, like that artistic guy, he can be a little bit more abstract. I don't have that. Everything I do and build it's kind of like for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everybody has that moment where they want to build something that just not only works but looks good.
Yeah.
And I think people, like, I can define that moment for me.
Right.
Like, I got into welding. My dad had a welding business, and I got into it as a tool. I raced cars. I needed to do it.
Right.
But I can remember the day as I grew in the ranks of my racing, I wanted to build, actually it was a dry sump tank, believe it or not. And not only does it have to hold, I mean, right, and be good and strong, but I wanted the welds to look good.
Yeah.
And so I got with my dad, and my dad was excellent TIG welder as well. And I'm like, okay, I've been doing it, but I want to be a little better at it.
Right.
This is a part, it's in a super late model car. It's going to be kind of, you could see it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you walk up to it, but I wanted it to be, there was a level of pride that I wanted to put in it. So I think that's kind of where
Right on.
my artistic or creative piece is now.
Right.
How, when was that?
That was in the
Like how old were you?
mid-90s.
Okay.
You
Oh, you don't have to
know.
age
Oh
yourself.
yeah. I mean, I struck my first
Miller for
I
34
struck
years.
my first arc when I was like 12.
Right on.
It was a dial arc HF.
I have one of those.
Yeah, right. So my dad had a dial arc HF and an old little Miller-Matic. It's 200. Yeah, I think it was, but
Right
it was
on.
back in the day. And then
So you like high school or
Yeah. So even before high school, I was working in my shop with my dad a little bit. But high school is where it really became useful because I needed to make money.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what was the point when you went to your dad and you were like, I want to get
better at
the
it.
next level.
Yeah. So that was when I was moving up into the higher racing ranks. It wasn't just the hobby stock and super stock cars. It was, you're getting into the faster cars, running the bigger tracks. So it's like, okay, I need this to actually be as strong as it is. And then, the fans all come down in the pits after the races, and, it's like,
you're looking over the car.
Yeah, right. So you kind of get this feeling that not only do I want to perform on the track, but
you want your stuff to look good.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. I want it to look good. So I don't know, maybe there's a little vanity there, but I think it was that was the part where I really wanted to do it good.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that was I didn't want to take over the family business.
Right.
I didn't
So
want
your dad owned a weld shop.
weld shop, and then he did so much aluminum work and boat repair stuff that he really kind of transitioned from just being an overall general welding shop and just primarily worked on marine applications, fixing propellers and skegs and motors and boats themselves, and so we got all the pitch blocks and balancing bars, all this stuff. Did it right, and it worked. Made money at it, but, I didn't want to be that full-time welder guy for whatever reason. I'm young.
Yeah.
I think I knew more.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I joined the Army and got my college money and went to school for electromechanical, and damned if I didn't get a job at a welding company. So here I am welding my happy
Andy,
ass
let's
off.
do some welding. You're like, no.
Oh, yeah, right. So, yeah.
But you still keep at it.
Yeah, I
correct?
do. I do enjoy it. No, there's no doubt. I do enjoy
So
it,
therapeutic.
and I obviously have done it for a living.
Yeah.
It's funny. I started Miller not actually in the welding area. I was the warranty failure analysis coordinator, which is a fancy term for I tested all the parts that came back that were defective.
Right.
And whether it was a Miller default or a defect or something from a vendor part, or if I would work on failure trends and work with engineering on changes. So, it was actually in my area of study, but then I quickly transitioned out of that, went into service engineering, and then became a training instructor for Miller.
Wow.
So
now I'm back into welding.
The cool thing about that is, like, the machines inside and out now because you did all that kind of work.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I always think all welding is problem solving. Like
Yes.
there's an action and a reaction. You just got to figure out what's doing what.
Mhm.
And having that background of going through the warranty returns and figuring out, things that went wrong, things that could be, but just the inside of the machine, just knowing what does what
Yes.
gives you a
Yeah.
really good scope of.
I think so. I think it shortens my troubleshooting
Yeah.
technique, if you would,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a doctor. You go in there and you throw up on him and say, I got this, and this, but he's already envisioned
Yeah.
in the first 2 sentences what kind of your deal is, right? What's
Yep.
going on. So I kind of have that under the cabinet understanding what makes the thing pump and go, and I do like that, and I still fix and repair machines on my own.
Yep.
I manage all the aftermarket performance and motorsports stuff, so I work with a lot of the race teams, and so I work with their engineering groups too. And
Cool.
but and I guess I love it because I still work with my hands, right?
Yeah.
And they're electromechanical machines, and that's I think where people kind of drop the ball on. They blame everything on the machine when really it could be the wrong drive rolls. It could be the liner's got a
always
kink in
the
it. It
machine.
could be right. It is.
Something's wrong with my machine. Hold
Yeah.
on a second.
Oh yeah, they'll cuss that machine before anything else. But in reality, it's usually the nut under the hood. that's got
100%.
Something.
Is that a industry term? Diagnostic term? Under the hood? So
No.
how does Miller being at the SEMA show differ from Miller being at a general industry show?
Big Fab
You know.
Tech.
Yeah, like Fab Tech. I don't know why I didn't say Fab Tech, but yeah, like Fab Tech.
Like for FabTech is more of an all-encompassing show for us. Everything from our industrial products, the robotics, all that stuff. It was kind of in that area. Nothing's really live though, right? So it's all static, and not mean like static, but some of it is, but this show is what we consider more of our commercial product show. It's end user focused, but it's also light industrial, so you could still get into manufacturing, but it's definitely more focused. You wouldn't need, in this show we actually did bring one of our smaller robot cells. Yeah. But it's the robot that is super, super easy to program. Yeah. It's called our co-pilot. So you don't even need a lot of engineering or programming knowledge to actually get it to run.
I got to use it 2 years ago at FabTech.
Oh yeah.
And was hoping to get one to do some like art demonstrations. Yeah. And at some point I think that'd be kind of because the applications. That's the thing with FabTech is FabTech's become more user-friendly over the years because they're realizing that these young guys aren't stealing sales from the big companies, but they're coming in it, and the person who bought 280DX 5 years ago or whenever it was out, whenever it came out, all of a sudden now they started a business in their garage. They've got a cobot in their garage, or the next level they've got a shop with a couple of cobots, and laser plasma cutters and all these kinds of things. And all of a sudden they've got a business that's bringing in millions of dollars. Yeah. It's kind of like the Ford, GM, Chrysler thing where you swear allegiance to one of them. You want to get them young,
right? Yeah.
So you get these guys coming in their early 20s, and then they're hooked for life.
Yeah. And the keep it simple, stupid thing is it should be our motto, but that's ultimately what we're still trying to do, is trying to keep it simple, trying to integrate automatic settings in the machines, because when like you said, trying to get the people in the young, we want to make their learning curve faster, because
make machines accessible, make everything accessible.
Yeah, they get disenchanted if they can't set the machine right. They can't work on technique.
Yep.
Right. So if you can't work on technique, you get frustrated, and then with your lack of knowledge, you can't even identify what's wrong with it. Yep. So if we can skip the machine setting part and get them so that we know the machine puts down a weld, then it's technique, and even it really shortens the learning curve with
and
the
then
welding.
Beyond that, you can still make adjustments, but you always have that baseline to go back to with the pro set.
Yeah, once you get your technique down and you feel like where I'm comfortable, it might I'm a little too fast. Yeah, like for me, I like to slow things down a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, it does have that adjustability, but it doesn't get you out of a welding condition, right?
Right.
You have that window.
Yep.
So yeah, I think those are great advancements. And like the new co-pilot, robot. Have you seen like the arc droids, the little plasma cutters? It's a plasma arm, so it's a cool deal. But it's literally you don't even need a computer to run it. It's got a pendant, and you can like sell. Not paid by the company, by the way. I just think it's cool, and it's the technology. It's simple. You can bring it over, touch it down to where you want it to cut, hit a learning point, and you can actually program it through the pendant.
Is that the Waymo?
No, it's red. It's called the Arc Droid. Okay. It's actually not on more like a transom style design. It's actually an arm, a robotic arm. Yeah, and so that kind of simple programming technology is what really applies to this market, because the cobalt is great for short run pieces, quick programming pieces, yet it still has the ability to store programs, and you can still upload predetermined stuff too, right? Yeah. So it's just the flexibility in this market has gotten so good that it makes it easier to get that influx of new talent.
Right. Do you see younger people walking the show here? Because this strikes me as being maybe like a manufacturing segment that would attract talent. They wouldn't have too much of an issue probably getting new folks to join it.
Yeah, this is, like I say, this is still Disney World for car guys. Yeah, and we do see some younger people coming in, and even the SEMA show is promoting that. They have the SEMA Young Guns program, and that is exciting.
A lot of educational,
a lot of educational focus. Just and I guess on a point where they know that they have to do that to keep that inspiration going in that younger groups, just to build cars and be involved in cars and the
Yeah.
whole transition into electric stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a fossil fuel guy at heart.
Right,
but,
right.
But at the same time, I realize the industry is evolving. It always is. But we do see that. And we've had some young influencer talent come in and, even interview us because they want to get that message out to their peers.
Yeah.
Right.
And
100%.
that's cool. I thought that was,
And builders are rock stars now. Like if you can
Yeah.
make something cool, you social media, the internet, it's
Yeah.
not by word of mouth anymore. It
No.
just instantly spreads, and now people are coming to the show to see these guys who are
For
building the
sure.
cars and building the
And,
trucks.
the social media stuff is not easy. That
No.
that takes time. It's not. It is. You got to be dedicated to it,
Right.
right? And so anybody who is famous, they did it because they worked hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It wasn't a
100%.
gift.
No,
Yeah.
for sure. But combine that working hard with the ability, like you didn't have that 40 years ago where you had a TV show with a dude building a monster truck on it or something like that. Just didn't exist
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
So
Yep.
it's I think welding overall has been cool too, because all these little niches of types of welding, whether it's doing walking the cup or something like that. Back in the day, I can remember being on message boards and there was like 2 guys ever posted doing that stuff. And like now it's opened up the world to see there's these different capabilities or possibilities or processes. And that to me has been pretty cool to watch over the years.
Yeah, that, and I mean, like, there's so many of these, sites that have opened up too. Just like weld porn, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, everybody goes and checks out weld porn or posts stuff to it, because again, that's that part where they've taken what I was trying to have more pride in the parts I was building. They took it to the next level.
Right.
Like they actually want to show their stuff off.
Yeah.
And that's cool because I think that exposure also builds interest, and a lot of people don't know where to start because a lot of the like schools and stuff, they have such formal layouts for their program. Like if I just want to learn MIG or something to that effect, it's tough to find organizations that will allow you to do that. They want you to start at the basics and
Right.
learn volts and
That's-
amps and all this stuff. So
That's one of the reasons we do our workshops. Is it's more towards like you don't have to have a 9-week community college course or whatever. It's just like, what do you want to get better at?
Yep.
Or what do you want to learn? Let me know. We'll go, and 4 hours we'll be right into it, and you'll be going out welding.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think a lot of manufacturers often, they'd approach it the same way. They don't need, obviously they would like somebody that can ultimately step forward and be that person that knows so much about welding, because as much as they need people to join the entry-level ranks, to groom those people to know what they do, how they do it, that's probably the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But to get started, and many times, it's just learning MIG.
Yeah,
Getting ready for
and,
that.
And quite honestly, if you're just a person looking for a good, well-paying trade, and and there's companies in your area that primarily do MIG, why not get in the industry after a certificate course on just that and be concentrated? Now, and I get there's still a need for that structured avenue for people who want to go through. Maybe they want to get into quality control, or they want to get into weld engineering. Obviously, that's the route they need to go. But I think the people, like, and I'm a TIG guy. I kind of lean towards TIG. That's just kind of what I like. So if I had to do a job where I had to sit down and weld all day, I think it would be TIG.
Yeah. But in this industry, that really applies, though, doesn't it? Especially when it comes to lightweighting.
Sure.
And
A lot more, exotic materials. If you're working with chromoly or high strength, low alloy steel,
Titanium
things
now.
like that. Yeah, exactly. A lot of titanium. That was kind of one of those things that was
Everyone's
the
scared
mystery.
to weld
Yeah,
it.
it was
Yeah,
the mystery metal,
exactly. Yep.
and it really, I love welding it.
It's
There's
amazing.
other ways you need to, the gas coverage and things like that. You have to add to it.
Flows so it's such an interesting flow.
It is, and it melts like butter. Like you don't know it's happening, and all of a sudden, poof, there it is. The puddle appears. It's different than aluminum.
It almost feels like it's pulling the wire into the metal. Like you got to get the temp range just right, and
And the funny part is too, like I know people who do some titanium, and they'll show me their welds, and they're all colored up and purple and all these colors.
You don't
It's
want
like
that.
you don't want that with titanium. It looks really cool, but you obviously didn't keep the gas on it until it got below 900 degrees.
Yeah, I let that go if it's like Harley exhaust or something like that. That's not super structural, but anything structural.
I've seen it on wheelie bars.
That's not good. That's
right.
Oh, we'll just wire wheel that off. That's not stainless.
No,
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Bad idea, jeans.
Yeah, roger that.
Is titanium? I know at one time, and I know it's still expensive, but is it prohibitively expensive? How does one approach titanium if you're looking to?
I think if
work
you're
with it?
going the titanium route, you don't care what the costs are.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, all right,
Like, I mean, the advantages of it, weight and strength, things like that, outweigh the cost. So, and it's kind of like chromoly. A lot of people don't use chromoly because it's twice the money of steel.
Yeah.
And now there's other high strength, low alloy materials like Dokal, things like that. I love working with Dokal. It's even a little more money than chromoly. But the prep time is nothing. Like I literally squirt it, wipe it, and weld it. Where with the chromoly, you're grinding the so-called mill scale off of it,
the coating,
right?
whatever.
Yeah, and you're getting that down to that raw metal so that it welds properly.
Right.
And that's non-existent, and the newer materials also have better fatigue life cycles. So where chromoly will finally stress itself and you'll have some crack appearing, the Dokal doesn't, and I'm using Dokal. It's just the brand name of that type of tubing.
Yeah.
And it's not just tubing. It was originally designed in the automotive market for stampings, and that's when crash ratings really started going through the roof, is these high strength, low alloy steels.
Yeah.
Well, the company decided, we got an opportunity in the racing and the motorsports industry. Let's figure out how to precision roll this stuff. So it's precision rolled, seam welded. Now get this, the seam is just as strong as the base metal. So when you're fabricating with it, like we've put it in tubing benders, we've bent it on seam, off seam, side seam. And it doesn't matter on the tubing. And another side note, this tubing is the only tubing that's authorized by the NHRA for top fuel dragsters outside of chromoly.
So, and then with the titanium, it is such a pain in the ass to fabricate because there's not really, like, once it's formed, it's formed. There's no moving it around. You have to make sure it stays, if it warps, you're done.
Okay.
Grinding it's a pain in the butt.
For sure.
Sanding it down is a pain. Like forming it is a pain in the butt. The welding is awesome.
Right.
Everything else.
Machining is actually pretty. You kind of treat it like stainless. If you're a machinist, I just treat it like stainless.
Gotcha.
Use
I
those
haven't
types
been
of
on
bits.
that end of it. Just as far as like
it machines similar to stainless.
Finishing what makes it more difficult.
It's just how the material, the surface gets gummy when it gets
it's soft.
heat put to it, and it's just bizarre. Like it doesn't. It builds
For something
up heat.
so strong, right?
It builds up heat. I don't know the technical reasons why it does that, but like regular techniques of you almost have to use a rotary file in a lot of places. I'm sure I need to find better. I've tried a few different types of abrasives and haven't had much luck really. But I'm doing stuff that most people aren't doing with titanium with art, and then at work. Part of the new MPF or the Booker M10, the new tank we're building, some of that's titanium. So I spent a couple of months just building up welds on a part that came in that was wrong, that needed to be put together. So they were like 3 feet long, and I think a 3/4 inch fillet weld. That was awesome. TIG welded all of it.
That's pretty sporty.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. Just
God.
use everyone gets all caught up in the gas flow, and even when I did my cert for it, I used to use a gas lens, keep the heat down. Depends on the thickness of the material, but we were talking about the colors earlier. You don't want anything really above straw, because of what it shows is on stainless, it's just that's corrosion resistance, and you can wipe it off and you're good, or passivate it, whatever. With titanium, if the color comes through, it shows there was a reaction beneath the surface that made it brittle.
It was exposed to atmosphere too quick.
Yes.
Yeah. Titanium has a critical temperature where that happens, and it's 900 degrees roughly. So you need to keep the argon on it until it gets below that point. Otherwise, you'll get that coloring, which indicates that contamination, which also indicates brittle. It's going to be more brittle. The elongation percentages are gone, so it doesn't have that flex of the joint.
Does that slow down the kind of
It does slow
movement,
down your
the
action,
travel?
your travel speed. Big gas cups if you can, and if you can put what's called a trailing gas on it, which means there's another gas following you as you're welding.
Wow.
That really helps. It helps you speed
Especially
up.
if you're doing
too,
thinner stuff, which most of
Yeah.
the people in this market would be
Yeah,
doing.
I was about
sure.
to say, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you get a lot of questions like that from people stopping by, working with
more so
titanium?
with like some race teams that are trying to dabble in improving their game, things
Okay.
like that, because they don't know. The drag industry is probably a big one that uses the titanium in some of those parts and pieces. Some sanctioning bodies don't even allow it because of its difficulty in welding. And
And you can't just
as a
look at it
safety
if they like sanded it down, or you can't look at it and be like, oh, that's good. You
right,
just don't know.
that. Yeah. That's the problem.
That's crazy. So the thing that really amazes me about the racing industry is just the steps taken to take second. You know what I mean? It's
Take
you know,
tenths,
oh, yeah.
not even
I
second.
don't
Like,
even- like,
oh, yeah.
I can't even relate to, you can hear by the way I talk, I move at a different speed than other people, but just, that industry is spending so much time and effort just to kind of, as you say, tenths of a second
yeah.
off of,
Like titanium bolts and things like that. Literally, it's
Yeah,
just things that you can put all the bolts in the car titanium, and you're really only going to save like 6 pounds.
Yeah, but even like
but it's 6
welding wire,
pounds.
but
6 pounds on a race
amount
car,
of welding wire put into some
Oh, yeah.
type of fabrication or something.
yeah, a
like
lot
that.
of guys overdo it on the welds and put
Oh,
too
the
much
metal
weight.
deposition, and for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are like and I'm going to use NASCAR as an example. There were some teams that literally TIG welded their whole chassis together. Well, NASCAR uses mild steel for their chassis
Right.
for a reason, and part of it was because of
weld.
acquisition of talent. They wanted to make it easy to manufacture this part that's going to be destroyed in a couple of races anyway.
Exactly.
It's a contact sport,
Yeah.
right? And so
Rubbin's racing.
They say swap and paint for a reason.
NASCAR did a good thing, but they didn't stop people from TIG welding them. But with the TIG welded chassis, the weld deposition was half the size. And again, you got talking weight again,
Yeah.
right? And so and with all the triangulation and all the welding going on, you can't swing a 12-inch tape measure anywhere in a NASCAR car and not hit a weld.
Right.
I mean, so
12-inch tape measure.
Yeah, literally. This, I mean,
Yeah.
you
I
can't.
think that's 12 inches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing. Anyway, but lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
there.
of course.
Welders
we did.
can't swing a 12 inch.
So you'll literally lose about another good 8-10 pounds just in welding
Yeah.
wire.
How does the performing racing industry fit within Miller? Are they dedicated? I mean, obviously you're involved with it,
Yeah.
but
Oh yeah.
do people approach you with questions like that?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times it's even, I'm welding this material, or they know it's mild steel, but they want to weld it with something stronger, which is sometimes counterproductive because strength doesn't actually equate to durability, especially in a high harmonics, vibration, impact zones, right? So we've had situations where teams would weld these mild steel chassis and they'd use like, they're branded under different brand names, but like super missile rods, or they're like a blended 312 stainless. It's compatible with steel and mild steel. I mean, it is, and it puts on a real pretty weld, but it doesn't have any elongation. It has 120K strength, whereas the mild steel is only 65 to 72.
Right. What's the point of doing that? You're creating a stress area, actually.
Yeah, and the weld is stronger than the tube, so that it doesn't stretch with it.
Yep.
So you need to match your elongation percentages, and what happened was these teams that did that found that their chassis were stress cracking even without even ever hitting anything.
Oh, wow.
And so they had to junk multiple chassis because they welded it with the wrong filler metal.
Yeah.
Literally a standard 70S2 filler metal is the way to go on some of that stuff. So it's not necessarily about if it looks good, because looks good doesn't necessarily translate into performance.
You can't have it look bad, because that
right.
also contributes to.
for sure.
But
it's
it
harder
has
to
be
get through
consistent.
tech if it looks
Yeah,
bad.
exactly.
Or I imagine, does word of mouth in this industry kind of have a negative side effect too?
Yeah.
In terms of maybe bad advice is being passed around?
Oh,
yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
I'm not even in that industry, and I can tell you 100% that happens.
Well, I think maybe that comes with people kind of doing their day job at home too, and maybe they're they do
It's like we were
something
talking
there
about the
and bring it
machines
into-
earlier. It's always the machine's fault.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a bunch of people who are like, oh, this filler sucks. And it's like,
Right.
why do you use that? Oh, because so-and-so told me.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's-
Yeah. And there's
how-
so much more to it than that. And it's not just about matching strength either. So you've got elongation, which obviously is how the tube stretches and the weld stretches with it. But there's another variable there that nobody takes into play, and that's when you crash a car at those high speeds. It's a shock impact. So that shock impact, the weld has to have the ability to absorb some of that. It's kind of like Play-Doh. Like if you take Play-Doh, you can stretch it out, and it stretches if you do it slow. But if you pull it real quick, bam, it cracks. Right? It comes apart. Mm-hmm. And so a weld's going to do the same thing. It has to be able to absorb a shock impact at 200 mile an hour at obtuse angles. So that's a very important part of the motorsports industry. And even grain structure, how the grain of like when you're fabricating, right? The grain structure of it's more important in aluminum, but even in steel, on how you form it. Mm-hmm. You can find that you're bending something and it's forming stress cracks.
Yeah,
why does it do that?
Yeah,
But
you mentioned like graining and forming. Obviously, when it comes to like more production oriented fabricating, just having that consistency of material presentation to maybe a press brake operator.
Yes.
Not allowing that person to guess what it is, having it presented to them in such a way. And they're even talking about that. We were talking about robots earlier, but having that same type of consistency to where everything, the material, in fact, the one thing you probably can't control is the actual material coming into your facility.
That's true. Yeah. So that material quality is one, but even when you're in the engineering stage of laying out a part, let's say you have a huge sheet of this material and you're trying to decide to get the most pieces out of it.
Yeah.
Nobody considers grain direction.
Right.
And that will even affect how you're putting it in a brake press.
Right.
If you're bending with the grain or against the grain.
We have to look at
there's slight differences.
Yeah, we have to look at that all the time when we're forming 6061 at my day job.
Yeah, and even forming 6061 is, it doesn't like to be bent.
No, it doesn't.
It
you might have to anneal parts of it, but we right from where it gets cut, like the guy's looking at it to see where the grain is, so when it gets bent, it's in the right direction, And sometimes you get burned on that because it does want to crack.
6061 is tough because if you want to, it has such a low bend performance, only like 10%. And even if you anneal it and bring it back down to a zero temper, it only goes up to 20.
Yeah. That is still.
So it's you're not gaining a lot on some of that.
Right.
So
we use a lot of 50-52 too, which is much easier to form.
I try to push people into that. Yeah, for sure. But even picking the right filler metals on aluminum, it's not necessarily based on strength. There's a lot of other applications to take in mind. Are you looking for corrosion resistance? Are you looking for strength? Are you looking for
performance?
Temperature is big in this industry. That's probably one of the biggest ones I see is where, people will, everybody's doing turbo stuff now. Your charge tubes, right? It's all 60-61 stuff.
How hot?
Yeah, well, so it's hot, but most people don't realize that a high temperature application for aluminum is anything that's sustained over 150 degrees.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously low.
Oh, wow.
And so now you have to consider the filler metal that you're trying to weld that with to prevent cracking.
Okay.
So you can weld 60-61 with like 53-56 filler and it looks really good. Like it's shinier weld when you're TIG welding it, right? It looks good, right? Again, this is that area where it looks good might always be good because any 5000 series alloy has more manganese and magnesium in it, and that's crack sensitive. So when you add heat to it, it amplifies that problem.
Yeah.
And now you get these guys that the turbocharged tubes, they're cracking and they're trying to re-weld them. They should be using a 4000 series filler metal.
So really,
it's high temperature application.
So in the performance race industry, do they go about like in these shops setting like WPSs?
Some do. Yeah, some do. And we work with, even like Hendrick Motorsports, for example, is one of the teams that we work closely with.
So some get very serious to avoid what you're describing.
That is true. But then there's the
people
that
got to learn to do their homework too.
That's it. Yeah.
There's so many options out there for, like you say, with filler rod material.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's way worse with aluminum than steel. Like there's less options in with steel that that take into account the application.
Right.
But with aluminum, it's crazy because if again corrosion resistance, there's filler metals that's better if you're going to be bringing it onto the water.
Something.
Anodizing, another one. Color matching.
Yeah.
You know, like 5000 series sucks for color matching, you know, or whatever.
Yep.
It's, you know, you just got to pick the right filler metal for, there's toughness, crack resistance, temperature. There's a number of those ways. And actually one of the apps that are really, really good at selecting filler metals is the Hobart Weld app.
Okay.
Another shameless plug. But the Hobart Weld app, you can download that. You can scroll the base metals you're welding in, let's say it's A356, which is a casting. Let's say you're welding 6061 fittings to it. You know, what's the right filler metal for that?
Really, that's specific.
Yeah.
Well, we've had that situation at, like, I've seen it where people look at a blueprint and they're like, okay, and then they're supplied the material and like, okay, I can make this. And then they don't look at the subnotes of what filler metals to use or what. I've had it come to me where it's gone through the entire process and it gets to me and I'm reading the blueprint and these parts have already been made by other people like for a long time. And I'm looking at the blueprint going, we don't even have this wire in the house. Like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. And I do seminars even to try and educate people on that because a welding dealer, they're great, but a lot of them only stock the common stuff. Like you can go to any welding dealer and get 4043 filler metal.
Nope.
Yeah. 4043 is great because it's like, you know, all that
Pretty
aluminum.
versatile.
Yeah, like if you don't know what your alloy is, like you have this stuff laying around and you don't know what it is, 4043 is probably what I would say it's most cross compatible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that's what I tell people because you could have 3003, you could have 5052, and when you put them in your hand, they look the same.
Exactly.
But 3003 is easier to bend and easier to form. You know, there's some, you know, operational characteristics of it that you can identify. But
within the last, was it 5 to 10 years, they've been able to start welding 7000 series. I've seen
some
that.
7000s, some 7000s you can, and same even 2000. So, you know, typically when you look at the alloys, the higher the number, the stronger the alloy strengths are, right? Which is untrue with 2000 series. 2000 series is, 1000 is pure aluminum. And then 3000, 5000, 6000, 7000. But 2000 is another alloy that's kind of has more in common with the 7000 series.
Okay.
And a lot of it is not weldable. There are certain versions of it now that they make, but they're still considered 2000 or like 7000, like the 7500 series stuff. They still, consider that kind of unweldable because it does crack. It's, after you weld it, cracks. You can't get around it. Yeah. But that they are coming out with some, better filler metals.
So like in the 90s, in NHRA has always been kind of reactive and not proactive, right?
Yeah.
Has that gotten any?
It's in any sanctioning body.
It
NASCAR
is 100%,
too.
100%. Yeah.
Something breaks or somebody crashes.
I was about to say,
in my day job, it's the same thing. Like we're always waiting for somebody to get hurt or something to break, and then we're like, oh, we got to fix that. Yeah. But when they first started using chromoly, I believe they were ordering it in the raw state. So like John Force, or was it Pendragon, crapped up a bunch of chassis because they were ordering it raw instead of annealed, and then they were annealing it, which ended up making it harder because it wasn't annealing it really. It was heat. It was
heat treating.
It was more heat treating than annealing. So then they realized, and they ran races like that, and that was like annealing the entire car at once, or heat treating the entire car at once, and it caused the chromoly to be brittle. And then they figured out that they had to order it in the annealed state, weld it, and then
go back.
Yeah.
Because parts of the car was double heat treated at that point,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So, and when you do weld some of that stuff, heat treating it is supposed to bring back that flexibility of the weld joint. Ideally, if it's done right, at the proper temperatures. And that's one thing that I have gotten away from the chromoly, because no matter what you do with it, it still has a fatigue life cycle. And you can only, like an aircraft frame, right? You can only pressurize that thing so many times, so many takeoffs, so many landings, and you've compromised its strength. But, the chromoly and how some of those drag cars are built, they're designed to flex. That's part of the chassis suspension is how well the thing flexes, right? And so you can only do that so many times, but the inspection process is critical. And I think that's where some of them, maybe dropped the ball on some of that inspection stuff, especially when they started doing more of these slip joint tubes where the actual tubes slide inside of each other, and that made the chassis flex more. So, yeah, and that's some of the where the new tubing is worth the money, because those fatigue life cycles are, it's a lot better. I wouldn't say it's eliminated, but it's tremendously better. The other cool thing about some of these new tubing, I'm going to say Dokal again because I have more experience with it, is because it was designed for the manufacturing automotive market, it can be welded with all the processes. You can resistance spot weld it. You can MIG weld it. Now as a manufacturer, we don't recommend MIG welding chromoly because the transfer of the arc is more violent. And so the heat effect zone is more defined. And anywhere it's more defined, there's more opportunity to crack.
That's where TIG welding is.
You're melting the base metal first, adding the filler metal. It's a more proper fusion. The grain structure is better.
It's a more even heat affected zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can add pulse, like high pulse rates, agitate the weld puddle, and even makes it even better. So, yeah, there are ways that we always recommend, with the chromoly. But this Dokal stuff, you can legit MIG weld it.
Right.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I'm finding that out right now.
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. I got a guy that used to build all these chromoly bicycles, like these, like mountain bikes, off-road race bikes, stuff like that. And even they changed to Dokal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because even the forks like that,
material technology has come so far in the last, no more drinks for you, has come so far in the last like 10, 15 years. Like now everyone's using carbon fiber. Titanium's more accessible.
Yeah.
People are having, parts 3D printed out of materials.
Yes.
And
I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And now these, people who want specific things out of materials are coming up with those specific things out of materials rather than just like, Joe Bob said this works. Now it's like it comes with the whole sheet of the things that it went through, and scientists are working on these things to make a better metal, to make them lighter and stronger. And that, bigger industries, I'm sure, fuel that. Like the automotive industry fuels that a lot.
Oh, that's really what drove it into the motorsports industry.
Right.
The car companies, when they went away from full box frame tubes, then the crash rating started sucking, and they needed a way to subsidize that. And having stamped floor pans, A post, B, C posts, all that stuff. The rocker panels are now all high strength, low alloy steels.
Right, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the foot boxes, where your feet are, how they don't, come in and crush your ankles and legs.
Thank God for the crumple zone.
So that it really was the motorsports industry was, which is weird, right? You think motorsports stuff is all the advanced stuff, and then the car companies feed off of them.
Maybe
this is a scenario that's ass backwards.
Yeah.
This company decided to make these high strength, low alloy tubing, and not for the the
don't have the
motorsports
resources
industry.
as an entity like NHRA or NASCAR to develop your own. I guess NASCAR might, but just to develop your own material to use.
Yeah.
So when somebody else does it, it's like, oh, sweet.
Yeah. Well, then they go through an extensive certification process, right? Because they freak out because it's seam welded. Yeah. Well, okay. Realistically, let's talk about seam welded tubing, because DOM is actually seam welded tubing, but it's drawn over mandrel and it's blended in, so you really don't see the seam.
Right.
It's not seamless tubing.
Right.
There's no such thing.
Right.
Right. So DOM is still a fabricator's choice because it's precision rolled over mandrels. The material thickness is consistent. The tube diameters are consistent.
Nominally everything.
Yeah,
is.
right. Yeah, and you don't have that seam weld that's protruding inside the tube.
Right.
You can feel it.
Yep.
But if you look at DOM tubing really closely and put it up to the light, you will find the seam. So that was one of the things I think NHR had to kind of shed that moniker that the seam welded tube was bad, but it in this particular case it absolutely doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not like you're flowing anything through it or anything like that.
No, and you could, and I'll credit Murph McKinney for doing a lot of the testing and some of the certifying. He's built top fuel cars for forever, and he did a lot of the testing that proved to NHRA that not only is this tubing easier to work with, it's safer.
Yeah.
Bonus.
Double
that's
bonus.
Great. Yeah. Man, that's 34 years and 47 minutes.
I love talking to Andy in settings like this because I learn so much.
No, I mean
no.
seriously, it's one of those deals where I wonder if you've ever had a chance to go work for one of these
Yeah.
racing teams.
I almost went to go work for Hendrick years ago. This is back when Terry Labonte was still running and stuff, but I was gonna fabricate, prototype, and test parts for them.
Oh wow!
But we, as a sponsor, or you sponsored them, and I managed the motorsports industry, and so yeah, it went pretty high. Like, I mean, literally, Mr. Hendrick said, "I can't hire you unless I can assure that your program won't change with us."
Oh,
And unfortunately,
wow.
nobody else at Miller is dumb enough to run this program, so I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you were in a unique position with your background and your them working with them for so long.
I enjoy it. I now have like two passions. I still have a passion for motorsports and the industry. I don't race that much anymore. I build cars that I can go play with at track days.
When you do
like
race,
that.
what would you do?
If I do race, I mean, it's still, I enjoy the road course stuff. Like I'm building I call it a motorsports mutt. So I'm going to take a page out of Josh's book. If you go to the Real Garage YouTube channel, we're building a 69 Trans Am.
Yeah. I was watching that last night.
800 horsepower NA, but it's going to be designed, to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Long course, road course stuff, autocrossing. A lot of parts are quick change, so it's all 4-link suspension, but they're all pinned. So I can literally
flexible.
I can literally pull the coilovers off and put drag coilovers on it. It has a quick change rear end in it, so I can change the gearing in it.
Yeah.
So literally in 2 hours, I can go from running a road course to bringing it to my
that's
local
cool.
drag
That's super
strip.
cool.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So
that's pretty
it's
sweet.
but it's not going to do everything perfectly.
Right.
It's
going to be fun.
But it'll still hit 180 mile an hour
Allow you to
at
do a lot
Charlotte
of
Motor
things.
Speedway.
I was about to say.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's still got the fun factor, and it's gonna have air conditioning. My wife won't get in it if it doesn't.
That's the other sign of 34 years. It's
Yeah.
the creature comforts you need.
That was when I first got my 2018 Demon, I took a friend for a ride. We were just ripping through Detroit at triple digits,
Oh, man.
and he's like, and the AC's on full blast. I'm like, yep. Perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting old is not so bad.
I don't know if it's old or just spoiled or maybe not spoiled. Let's call it less flexible.
Less
There you
flexible,
go.
yes.
Well
Stiff.
seasoned.
Yeah, well seasoned.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us today. It's been a blast.
This is fun. Yeah, no, you guys are a ball.
Yeah,
we
thanks
should
for
do it
having us in the
again.
booth, too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks to Miller Electric for having us. And if you want to go rate, review, and subscribe, go where you get your podcasts, or you can send us a note at podcast@fmamfg.org. Thanks a lot for joining us.
The Fabricator Podcast is a production of Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, located in Elgin, Illinois. The show is hosted by Dan Davis and the staff of FMA Communications. The podcast is produced by Gareth Slager and recorded and edited with the help of Brandon Geyer. Sales support provided by Andy Flando. Additional production support by Elizabeth Gavin, Dana Weicker, Mary Diamond, Mike Owens, and me, Sarah Spring. Thank you for listening.